The sine function relates a real number t to the y-coordinate of the point where the corresponding angle intercepts the unit circle. In other words, the sine of an angle t equals the y value of the endpoint on the unit circle of an arc of length t. The cosine function of an angle t equals the x value of the endpoint on the unit circle of an arc length of t. Now, remember, if this angle here is t, then that means that this arc length is also t since we are on the unit circle, because remember that the arc length formula was equal to the angle times the radius. And here, since we're on the unit circle, the radius is equal to 1, so the arc length on the unit circle is just equal to whatever the angle is. So if we're looking at an angle t, and we're looking at the terminal point here, it has coordinates x and y. Now, we are going to define these two new trigonometric functions, and they are sine and cosine. So when we are looking at an angle on the unit circle, sine of that angle with the notation sin, parentheses, whatever the angle is equal to the y-coordinate of the terminal point. And cosine, written cos, parentheses t, is equal to whatever the x value is of the terminal point. Now, if you're like me and you're very forgetful, this mnemonic device might come in handy for you. Now, it's pretty ridiculous, but this is how I remember which coordinate is associated with which trig function. So my mnemonic device is, let's say you are with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, and they ask you, why won't you sign this prenup or prenuptial agreement before we get married? And then your response is, 'cause I know you're still in love with your ex. That's how I remember. Again, it's pretty ridiculous. Example 5 says find the sine and cosine of the following angles. So the first angle we're looking at is 30 degrees. So we want to find sine of 30 degrees and cosine of 30 degrees. And it's always helpful for me personally to draw this out on the unit circle. So here's my y-axis, here's my x-axis, here's that portion of the unit circle, and we have our special right triangle here. We know that this is 30 degrees. We know that this is 60 degrees. And so we want to remember from earlier, we have the ordered pair as √3/2, comma 1/2. And so remember, sine is associated with the y value. Why won't you sign the prenuptial agreement? So sine of 30 degrees is the y value, which is 1/2. And cosine of 30 degrees is the x value, because your response is, 'cause you're still in love with your ex. So cosine of 30 degrees is equal to √3/2. All right, part B asks us to find sine of pi/3 and cosine of pi/3. Now, when we were dealing with the special right triangles, we didn't work so much in radians, so it might be helpful for some of us to convert this into degrees. So if I multiply this by 180 degrees over pi, the pi's will cancel out, and we are left with 180 degrees over 30, which is equal to 60 degrees. Now, if I sketch this on my unit circle in the first quadrant, my special right triangle would look something like this. and we know that this angle here is 60 degrees, this is 30 degrees, and so the coordinates of our terminal point are going to be 1/2 comma root 3 over 2. So that means that sine of pi over 3 is going to equal the y value, which in this case is root 3 over 2, and cosine of pi over 3 is going to equal 1/2. And so those are the two values that we were looking for in part B. So here we have a blank unit circle with all of the special angles that we would want to know when we're taking a trigonometry class. And we're going to go over some of these together. So here at the very start, this is 0 degrees, and the second spot is to represent the angle in radians. So 0 degrees is equivalent to 0 radians, and then the coordinates of the terminal point there are 1, 0. And we filled out these other ones in an earlier example, so I'm going to go through these. That first special angle is 30 degrees, the next one is 45 degrees, and that is 60 degrees. And I'm going to now fill in the radian values as well. So this is pi over 6. The 45 degrees is the same as pi over 4, and 60 degrees is the same as pi over 3. And we know the coordinates for the terminal points as well. This is root 3 over 2. This is 1/2. This is root 2 over 2. This is also root 2 over 2. And then for this last terminal point here, that's 1/2 comma root 3 over 2. Let's go ahead and fill out some other ones. If we look at the next one, we know that this is 90 degrees, which is the same thing as pi over 2. And the coordinates for this are 0, 1. Now, I'm not going to fill out this whole thing. I'm going to leave it up to you to finish the rest of these, but maybe let's do a couple more. I know that the coordinates here are -1, 0, and this angle is 180 degrees, which is the same thing as pi radians. This one here is 135 degrees, which is equal to 3 pi over 4 radians. Now, notice that this coordinate and this coordinate are almost exactly the same, but it's being reflected over the y-axis. So the thing that has to change is this needs to be negative square root of 2 over 2, and then the y-coordinate remains square root of 2 over 2. Let's choose another one, maybe in quadrant 4. So this here would be 330 degrees, and the radian value for that would be 11 pi over 6 radians. Now, notice I'll use a different color. I'll highlight this in blue. This point and this point are almost the same, but they're being reflected over the x-axis. So that means that the x-coordinates are going to be the same, but the y-coordinate for 330 degrees is going to be -1/2, and it's going to look like that. And then if we make a full rotation around the circle, we end up at 360 degrees, and we know that this in radians is 2 pi, and 0 and 2 pi are coterminal angles, so they're going to have the same terminal point. I'm going to leave it up to you to fill out the rest of this blank unit circle. If you run into any struggles, you can easily Google unit circle and it'll show you all of these values. But go ahead and try to fill this out on your own. And then once you've completed it, Google unit circle and just make sure that you got all of the values correct on this.